Architects, engineers, and contractors need to be on social media today, and so do their firms. But I get it. You don't have time or you don't know what to do. Well, in today's episode, I have with me Lindsay Diven. Lindsay is the founder of Marketers Take Flight. She's done a lot of work with AEC firms in helping them build and grow their marketing efforts. And in today's episode, she's going to talk about why you can't ignore building a social presence and how you can build one even if you only have 10 minutes a day. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Restarting your career when you are over 40 is no joke. But I was welcomed at Simpson, and I found a second family here. When you walk in and you see and you feel the culture at Simpson, it's very warm, it's very inviting, it's nothing like you've ever felt. Having the flexibility to be home gave me the opportunity to not miss anything. Simpson really does see your value. They see the value in everyone who's there.
All right, now I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show today. Lindsay Diven is the founder of Marketers Take Flight. Lindsay, welcome to the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
No, we're excited to have you. I mean, marketing is something I think that a lot of AEC professionals and firms for sure need some help with. So we're looking forward to kind of diving into that a little bit. But before we do that, Lindsay, can you give our listeners a little bit about your background and your career journey to date?
Yeah, so I studied marketing in college and found my way working at an engineering firm by applying to an ad for a marketing coordinator on monster.com, if you remember way back when. And so I started working as a marketing coordinator at an engineering firm and quickly built a team and then, became a regional director and then eventually a director of marketing and business development for an engineering and architecture firm. And then pivoted a little bit a couple of years ago to the software side. And then I'm also run Marketers Take Flight, which is a marketing training and development company.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, you've got some experience in the engineering world doing some marketing for firms, and then you decided to kind of go out on your own and help these firms, which is great. So let's talk a little bit about, social presence. Obviously our listeners are civil engineering professionals, civil engineering firm leaders. Why can civil engineering leaders not ignore their social presence? Why do they need to pay attention to it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons, but the main ones is everything was going digital, marketing trends and everything was going digital before the pandemic. The pandemic has since accelerated that. And then another reason is because our decision makers on our client and our owner sides, the generations are changing. And so as these younger generations come in, they're going online first. They don't want to talk to people. They want to go online. They want to find the information and find the experts themselves. And so I feel like, and then social is fed into those search results. So if you searched your name or my name or our firm name, our LinkedIn information or our Twitter information is going to pop up there in the top of those search results.
No, it's so true. And I think it's something that a lot of firms are stuck in the old traditional ways, and they're still not, kind of gravitating towards the idea that people are going to find you online. They're going to find your LinkedIn profile. So you might as well, take some time and put some effort into making it look sharp, because it is representing you and it is representing your firm. And, in some ways, to be honest with you, it's kind of irresponsible if you create a LinkedIn profile and don't, populate it. And then, because if someone searches for your firm and they find you and like they can't really connect with you, there's not a lot of information there. It could have come off as like, oh, whatever, and they go on to the next person. And again, your firm could kind of lose out. So I do think it's important, and I think you need to pay attention to it. And quite frankly, it's not that hard to do. It just might require a little time for you to dig into it one day.
Yep. Totally agree.
So what are some steps that engineering firms can take to become more visible online and show their expertise?
Yeah. So I think, you already talked about a LinkedIn profile, and LinkedIn also has pages. You can set up a page for your company and have your employees connect to that page So it actually helps legitimize your company, that you have a company on LinkedIn, that people work there. And so that's one area. I think too, another basic area is a website. And there are still so many firms that do not have websites, or their websites are really outdated. Like the last project that's on the website was from 10 years ago. So, and there are relatively easy website builders, and there are people that you can hire, or firms that you can hire nowadays relatively cheap. Heck, probably your niece or nephew probably could build a website. And so I would say just making sure it's like your kind of your digital address. It's your digital like base, and people are going to search for it to see if you're legit, and if you're still in business, and and they're going to poke around. And so on your website, you not only want to have your services, like what you do, very plainly spelled out what you do, who you do it for, and then where you've done it before. So some example projects, and then who's doing it. So there's this other old adage where we were afraid to put people on our website, like who works there, because recruiters will poach them and that kind of stuff. Well, they're doing it anyways.
Right.
So might as well put it on and put your experts on your webpage, because your clients and maybe other potential employees are looking to see who works there too, and see if they know anybody.
Yeah, all great points. I mean, the point about the LinkedIn company page is an important one. And I'll tell you right now, we get a lot of inquiries from, leaders in engineering firms for our project management training and types of training that we do. And when someone contacts us, the first thing I typically do will go to their LinkedIn profile page just to take a look at, who they are, who's reaching out to us. And I can't tell you how many times I scroll down their profile and I try to click on their company and it's not connected to the company LinkedIn page for whatever reason. Like they just typed the name of the company and their employment and they didn't make sure that it got connected. And so I think that that's a really important point that Lindsay makes, is that you want to make sure you're connected to your company. And in terms of like the idea, and I agree with you, this idea of like, you don't want to see who works for you and things of that nature. I mean, if you're worried about someone, hiring people away from you because they know who they are or they know how to find them, then you're in a lot of trouble, because they can find anyone. It's a matter of building your company the right way so people want to work for you, they want to stay there, they're excited about what they're doing, not just hiding them from your website. So I think that that's something that is a real important message beyond social presence, but also building something where people want to stay and be a part of. So that's really important.
Exactly.
So Lindsay, what if engineering firms only had about 10 minutes per week to build an online presence? What are some of the things that they can do in that 10 minutes each week to establish a presence?
Yeah. So assuming you have your LinkedIn page and your website, check. Either as your LinkedIn page, you can interact, or as your, like the engineering leaders, their personal profiles. What I recommend is first, spend some time following or connecting with all of your current clients, previous clients, teaming partners, other people in the industry, because that'll fill your feed. Whether it's on LinkedIn, we're talking about LinkedIn, but you could do this on Twitter. You could do this on other things, other platforms, but LinkedIn tends to be the best, in my opinion. And so that'll fill your feed once you make all those connections with their content. And then, so once you make those connections, spend for 5 minutes making the connections, and then spend another 5 minutes interacting with their content, their posts, either as yourself, or if you have access to your page, as your page, because that'll help. We forget that social media is social. So we need to engage, and we need to have these two-way conversations. And not only will that person see it, but all of that person's followers or that company's followers will see your comments. And so it just will amplify your reach and maximize your time. So I'm encouraging all of my clients and employees and students to start commenting. A lot of times we like, or, it's easy to click the like, but to really try to give some intelligent commenting. And you might only do 5 in 5 minutes, because it might take you a minute each time. And that's fine. If you do that once a week, I think that'll really increase your reach.
That's great. Yeah. And just a couple of follow-up points on that for me. When I was working as an engineer, but I knew I was going to eventually want to start my own company for training, I took about 20 minutes on my lunch break every day, and I just started building LinkedIn, going on, connecting with people I knew, maybe throwing a post out here and there, and just slowly building it. And today it's been an instrumental part of building EMI. I mean, I have about 15,000 connections that are engineers, but I will say we host a lot of podcasts. So I do get engineers, listeners that just connect with us. So that's a big help, obviously. But my point is that it was taking like a couple of minutes every day, consistently every day to work on it. And it wasn't a lot of time overall, but it was just like adding up. It worked well for me. The other thing that I'll say is that if I want to really see what's going on with a company, whether it's one of our clients or a prospective client, I will go right to their LinkedIn page and look at their updates, because for me, that's like a very current way to see what's going on. Whereas a website is typically pretty static. I mean, some engineering firms might update a blog, they might write some articles about what's going on. But going to the LinkedIn page, assuming they have a page and they're doing a good job, like Lindsay suggests, posting things and interacting with people, you can really get a good feel for what kind of projects they're working on. Are they going to conferences? Are they hiring people? And so it's a really good way for someone to get a heartbeat on your firm if you're listening. And so, they're watching your LinkedIn feed. So I think it's an important thing to put on there. And the other point that Lindsay makes there that I think is an important one to drive home is it's a very high leverage tool, because if you start to have connections with all of these people and you're posting stuff in your feed, now, hundreds of people or, however many people can really keep an eye on what you're up to. You can kind of build some credibility and build expertise without having to, call those 20 people or, send out emails to all those people. And so if you're someone who says I'm too busy for LinkedIn, you might want to rethink that statement, because really, to me, things like LinkedIn provide a lot of leverage because they allow you to get in front of a lot of people at one time, and potentially a lot of people that you want to be in front of, specifically depending on how you build your LinkedIn profile. So those are some things I think just to think about that maybe will get you a little more excited about it.
Yeah. It's like one huge networking event.
Exactly.
If you do it right.
And kind of building on that, Lindsay, how can a strong online presence help to build trust with your clients or even, I guess, prospects?
A lot of what you just said, you were just explaining, they can kind of get a pulse on what you're doing. And if you share things like, I love when firms share like job site videos. If you're out at a job site, open up your phone and walk through and take a video and post that. And so clients can see like you're actually working on things. You're actually doing things.
Right.
Or if you're in a design meeting, take a picture of that, internally and post it and say, here's the design meeting we had today, and here's some of the things we hammered out, and made decisions on. You don't have to get specific or specific clients, but you can kind of show the behind the scenes or how the sausage gets made. And I think that gives a real credibility, especially when a lot of engineering you know, gets buried, literally under the ground, depending on what kind of engineering it is. So it's really hard to show it after it's done. So talking about the process and talking about and showing the process really adds that, it positions you as the expert, and you know what you're doing and you're talking about it and you're not afraid to talk about it.
No, I love that. And it kind of really adds a human element to it, as opposed to just saying, hey, hire us to do, land development. And here's a link to our website, as opposed to, hey, check out what we're doing on this project. We ran into this problem. This is how we fixed it. Right. And so, you're out on a site, showing them how engaged you get in your project. So it's just like more dynamic than just, hey, come hire us for this. Like, people want to see what you're doing and see who you are. And I think that's one of the big benefits of social media for sure. So what tips can you share with our listeners in regard to creating a social media marketing plan for your business?
Yeah, so it could be overwhelming. So first, what I would like to say is to pick a platform. So we've been talking a lot about LinkedIn. So just pick one to start with, because it can get overwhelming. So pick one. It could be LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. I don't know. There's a ton of them. But, pick one. And then the key with social media is consistency. So you already talked about that a little bit. So the next thing you want to choose is decide is, how many times a week are you going to post? Is it going to just be once a week, twice a week, 5 times a week? But just pick a cadence that you can be consistent with. And then decide who you're writing the post for. So we've talked a lot about clients, but I know a lot of engineering firms are doing a lot of recruiting. So recruiting type posts where you're trying to recruit other engineers or college grads are going to be very different than if you're trying to get an architect or a contractor or a developer to hire you. And so who you're writing the posts for. And then I like to develop like content pillars, which are the different types of posts. So one might be like about us, one might be behind the scenes, one might be, employees culture or workplace
Mhm.
culture where you feature an employee. One might be a client spotlight or a project. Put those in those kind of those buckets because then it'll help you frame and then you can just rotate them. So if you post 3 times a week, you go through the first 3 pillars and then the next week you go through the next 3 pillars. And so it's kind of a variety of different types of posts that are engaging and meet a little bit entertaining, a little bit educational, a little bit promotional.
That's great. And I think engineering professionals will like that because it's kind of a thought out, strategic approach, and you can kind of wrap your head around it, 3 posts or this many posts and this type of
Mhm.
post, which I think is great. And I think that, kind of one of the keys that I've always found in posting is I think at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're giving value to the people that you're posting to. Right. And that's why, like, even I wrote an article on LinkedIn recently about this, and we can link to in the comments. But even like when people say like, "Hey, welcome aboard. We hired this new person," and they post something, it'd be great if you could say something like that, but then say like, "Hey, we hired Lindsay. Here's a couple of pieces of advice that Lindsay has
Mhm.
in her career development so far." So it's like,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, like, not to be rude, but a lot of people don't care who you hired, right? Like a lot of
Yeah.
engineers that are looking at your company, it's like, okay, they hire another person, right? So and in some way I understand that you want to show your company's growing, and that's great. And there's credibility involved, but why not also try to tweak the post a little bit to give some other value to those that are watching or that are listening or that are looking at it. So I think that's
Mhm.
something to keep in mind, is that people want to consume content that's valuable to them. In the world we live in today, they don't have time for anything else. So
Yeah, I would say either value or entertaining.
yeah, yeah,
If you
right.
can make them laugh, or,
100%.
chuckle, that'll work too. So it just depends on your company culture
Yeah,
too.
no, for sure. I mean, I think one of the most popular LinkedIn posts I ever did was like a Dilbert strip about something related to project management or something. I got so much interaction on it because it was funny, and people
Yeah.
gravitated to it, engineers gravitated to it. All right. So are there any final pieces of advice that you could give to a civil engineer out there who wants to just dig in and start building their online presence? Any last pieces of advice?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to start. You There's no really wrong way to do it. I mean there are. We're not going to go through that, but get started. Start with one social channel like I said, and then just connect or follow with people you already know in real life and start interacting with them, and that'll seem a little less intimidating, at least in my experience, than trying to reach out to people you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I love that advice. I think one of the reasons a lot of technical professionals don't engage in social media is because they do get overwhelmed, to Lindsay's point, and they feel like there's so many things they have to worry about that they just don't take any action. And
Mhm.
so I think the idea of breaking it down, like Lindsay suggests, pick one, and I recommend LinkedIn. I'm sure Lindsay does too. Pick one, build a solid profile, right? And start doing some of the things that Lindsay walked through today, taking time every day or every week, connecting with colleagues, et cetera. And just get the ball rolling. And I think like anything else in life, the more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to get, but just don't try to do too much at the beginning because you'll get
Mhm.
discouraged and you'll stop, and then you won't necessarily get started back up again. All right. So we covered a lot of good stuff there. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to finish up by asking Lindsay a couple of last career questions. We'll be right back. All right. We are back with Lindsay Diven. Lindsay is the founder of Marketers Take Flight. All right, Lindsay, we're going to put you on the civil engineering hot seat. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Do you have any specific rituals that you practice every day? For example, do you have a specific morning routine or a lunchtime routine, or just something that you do consistently on a daily basis that contributes to your success as a professional?
Yeah, so I have what I call a work day shutdown ritual. And I use the full focus planner. I'm a full focus certified pro. And at the end of each day, I jot down in my planner my schedule for the next day. my daily big three. So the three things that must get done the next day. And then I do my timesheet. And then I turn off my computer and walk out the door. I work at home. So I just walk out the door. But that workday shutdown ritual really helps me kind of close out the day and set me up for a really, I can just start work the next day, and know what I'm working on.
That's great. Is that inspired by Cal Newport or?
It's Michael Hyatt. He
Okay.
developed the Full Focus Pro or Full Focus Planner.
Okay. Yeah. Michael Hyatt. Yeah. Right. The full focus planner. And then also, I mean, I've read the book a couple times, Deep Work by Cal Newport, and he also recommends like having some kind of shutdown routine at the end of the day, just because, especially like you said, even if you work at home, I feel like it's even more important because like, you
Yeah.
want to just say, okay, like you're psychologically saying to yourself, I'm shutting it down. I'm done for the day. I'll come back tomorrow. But it can be helpful to detach from work and things like that when you get out,
Mhm.
and you could have a
Yeah. I used to have
restful.
a commute, which would help, but now it's like I walk out the door.
Right. Yeah. There's not a big transition. Um, all right. So is there a book that, we all hopefully read from time to time when we can? There's lots of good books and lots of good stuff out there, but there's often like one or two books that kind of stick with you for your career that you kind of go back to the practices and themes of them. Is there a book or two that you've kind of leaned on heavily, or the philosophies heavily throughout your career?
Yeah. So there's really two books. The first one I read in college, one of my bosses in college had me read. It was called Good to Great. And that philosophy, I mean, it's old but it has stuck and I feel like it's very timeless. And then, and it's helped me, especially as I started managing people and like the idea of getting the right people in the right seats on the
Mm,
bus that has really stuck with me. And then in the same vein, the five dysfunctions of a team.
mm.
And
Patrick
and so
Lencioni.
that's really helped me as I grew from a marketer to a manager of people. Those two books really just I use those like things from those books all the time.
That's great. No, Good to Great, Jim Collins is like, I know a lot of consulting firms lean on that book a lot, and I've heard a lot other guests mention that one on the show. And then The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, I think, is Patrick Lencioni, which is
Mhm.
also a book that a lot of people on the podcast have referenced. So that's good to hear those, and good to hear that you use those regularly, because I think those are the
Yes.
kind of books that can be helpful. All right. Thinking back on your managers of the past, and you don't need to name names, but if you think of like your favorite managers, what made them your favorite? Like we're trying to discover, like, what do good managers do? Like, what are their patterns?
So I have two favorite managers. I won't name their names. But I was thinking about this question. I was like, what are some of the why did I like them? And I think there are two main characteristics, or maybe three main characteristics that came up. One of the managers was I had when he was like my first manager out of college. And so he was very patient with me
Mm,
and especially when I had to ask a lot of questions because 'cause I'm not afraid to ask questions. And so he was very patient and taught me the business and taught me kind of the business of engineering. I learned, how to read a P&L statement. I was a marketing coordinator, so he was very patient and because I was curious because I didn't know anything about this industry. And then and my current boss has the same thing. She's very patient. And then the other thing is kind of letting me um, I've always been kind of an independent worker, and so kinda letting me run with things, like trusting me. We would talk about a project or a campaign or something and just kinda we talk about the guidance or the direction we wanna go, and then just go and let me do the work or let my team do the work. So,
mm.
kinda not a micromanager, but kinda gave had trust in me, you know, in the ability after we set the direction.
Kind of let you run with things when you got to a
Mhm.
certain point.
Mhm.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's a really important trait for a leader to be able to do that, because it frees that leader up to do other things, and it also gives the person confidence that they're kind of letting try things out, or because they're basically telling you, I believe in you to be able to kind of run with this on your own, at some point,
Mhm. Mhm.
which is great. All right, I've got one final question for you. We call it the civil engineering career elevator advice question. So if you got into an elevator with, let's say, a civil engineering professional, and you had 30 to 40 seconds with him or her to share some career advice, based on the work you've done with firms and everything you know about the industry, what would you tell that person?
Get into sales and marketing. If you want to grow in this industry, you've got to understand sales and marketing and how firms, position themselves in the marketplace and how they win their work.
No, it's solid advice. I mean, I think that most of the leaders in the industry, if you will, most of those engineering professionals that have really grown and advanced, they've done it because of that, right? They've been able to bring in work or learn how to grow. And even if you're someone that you might say, hey, I'm not great at business development, if you understand how the company wins work, you probably can still contribute. For example, a lot of firms get repeat work. So if you're not a great business developer, you may become a great project manager and put out great projects and have those clients keep coming back, right? So there are definitely things you can do, but to Lindsay's point, you need to understand how the company works and how work comes into it and how they grow and how they earn revenue. And I think you can do that, as early on as possible in your career to learn those type of things. And I guess to Lindsay's point earlier, you can ask questions, as many questions as you need to, if you have the right manager to kind of learn how to do that stuff. So once again, Lindsay Diven. Lindsay's the founder of Marketers Take Flight. Lindsay, I want to thank you for spending some time with us today on the Civil Engineering Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Lindsay. I know marketing is not something that's natural for us as engineering professionals or leaders in AEC firms, but we have to do it. It's fundamental, it's critical, and I'm telling you, it's a big part of recruiting, developing, and retaining your people. If you enjoyed our video, please consider subscribing here. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineers and their firms grow. We'll see you next week.